Alright, so for those of you just tuning in, we just crashed as we discovered a brand new bug, which is if you are a spectator and you try to open the text tree, the game crashes. I'm not going to do it this time, as that is the second time that's happened. Hopefully by the time you watch this on YouTube, that will be fixed. We are about to spectate a 3v3 high-rated arena game as part of my weekly Twitch TV live streams. If you want to get in on this, play some games, as well as learn more about Age of Empires 2, then just head on over to my Twitch page and scroll underneath the video player there to find my schedule. And also, if you follow me on Facebook and Twitter, you will get updates on when I'm streaming next. So, this is going to be a really good showcase of some of the new civilizations and how they match up to the current set of civilizations that we are used to. I cannot show you the tech tree right now for the Khmer and the Vietnamese. If you are looking for civilization overviews and information on all the new civs, I do have links to those in the video description below. Very comprehensive civ overviews. Tremendous civ overviews. I've watched a lot of videos, and these ones are tremendous. Hopefully we load in. And we're into the game. Cool. So, let's start off by briefly introducing the players. In the blue corner, we have Immunity playing as the blue Khmer, and we have Mothump playing as the orange Incas, Buddy playing as the yellow Indians, Kaladin playing as the teal Italians. Kaladin is also Telemacho's alternate account, so it's actually Telemacho's. For those of you who've been following my stream a long time, you might recognize the name. Pete will be playing as the red Koreans, and Okerville will be playing as the green Vietnamese. So we actually have 3 I civilizations, 2 of the Ks, and a V. This is a pretty interesting setup. We actually have almost exclusively, besides the Koreans, DLC civilizations for HD Edition on Steam. He says, I'm gonna boom, just can't do shit. Sounds about right. The Koreans are a very strong late-game civilization, basically. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, this specific arena map is actually functionally the same as the regular arena map that we all know and love. The only difference is that there's a chance for it to spawn the new animals and miscellaneous new assets. Thank you, Kanye Twist, for the 100 bits that has crashed my CLR browser. Seems to crash whenever I get like exactly 100 bits. Let me just turn that on and off real fast. And thank you, by the way, T90 again for the host earlier. Should I open the tech tree now, or is the game going to crash? I'm not going to do it. If you want to learn more about the tech tree, you're going to have to watch those civilization overview videos. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of the civs in this game, to hopefully improve your overall understanding of the Age of Empires 2 metagame and help you kick some butt when you're playing online. I also have some new tutorials and whatnot on the way if you keep your eyes peeled on YouTube. And if you want to see some of the top expert players in the world plays the new civs, we did have the Battle for Angkor tournament, and the VODs for that are also on my YouTube page. The first civ that I suppose we should start with is, well, I'll start with the Khmer, since we're looking at Immunity's perspective right now. So, the Khmer are a siege and elephant civilization, and my personal favorite in the Rise of the Rajas DLC. I really like the Khmer, even though they have a fairly, I guess, like, limited tech tree in that, so they're missing Arbalest, which is a really big drawback for them, and they're also missing champions and squires. So right off the bat, we'll notice that their archer range is not that great. They have hand cannoneers, of course, but a lack of thumb ring and Arbalest means that those are really a poor option. Most of their archer units are a very poor option as the game drags on, and in terms of their barracks, you know, they'll be able to make halberdiers as a support unit. It's just that they're going to be a lot weaker than they otherwise normally would be due to a lack of squires. It prevents them from catching up to cavalry units. When we look, though, at their stable is actually quite solid. They have excellent battle elephants that move 15% faster. Ooh, we did end up seeing a villager get lost there during that war lure. So they have pretty good elephants, I would say. The 15% faster movement speed is actually quite nice for closing that gap. Battle elephants are a unique unit that all of the 4 new civs in Rise of the Rajas have, so the Vietnamese and Khmer will have them this game. They're weaker than the Persian war elephant, but they're a lot cheaper and they're faster. And for the Khmer, they're actually very respectable movement speed. And that really actually helps with making them a useful unit in the later stages. They have also Tusk Swords to buff the attack stat on them by +3. Probably the most iconic aspect of the Khmer, though, are going to be their Scorpion-style units. So they have the Ballista Elephant, which is like a mounted Scorpion, so it's very, very strong. Has significant HP, but less attack, and then they have very good heavy Scorpions, too. And their team bonus actually grants access to, gives all of their Scorpion units an additional 1 range, which is also quite a solid bonus in general, so. I really like the Khmer, and they're one of their Civ bonuses, and one of my favorite ones, is that they have no building requirements to either build other buildings or advance through the ages, and that opens up a wide variety of potential rush strategies, and I think it gives them an excellent boom, because they do not need to build a blacksmith and a market to go to the Castle Age. They can actually just, God, so many dead villagers. They can actually go straight to the Castle Age once they get to the Feudal Age. Thanks so much, Okami-sensei, for the 23-month resub, and Akobo for the $23 donation, and Dilbert UK for the 13-month resub. Really appreciate all the support, guys. Make all the work I put in worthwhile. Thank you. Yeah, I have a wall that says happy birthday, Rez. My birthday is actually September 1st, but thank you. And I suppose you could still call it a boar lure if it's an elephant sandman. So yeah, I like the Khmer a lot. I think they're actually fairly strong arena civilization, and just a decent civilization in general. A very good scout rush, and again, this is stuff that I always, that I go over in the Civ overview, but I think they're pretty solid Civ in general. More of like a very strong rush and a very strong late game, but I think their mid game is a little bit lacking. But once they get to the late game and they get that huge death ball, they're just quite great. Very comparable to the Koreans. And we take a look at who is the Vietnamese in this game. So the Vietnamese are a significantly more binary civilization. I guess the Khmer are, even though the Khmer have kind of like a limited tech tree, they have a colossal amount of strategies that they are able to go for compared to most civs, at least that are like unique to them. There's so many variants of rush strategies. You can even though their monks aren't great, they have a pretty strong fast castlage into monks because they lack all those building requirements. They don't need to waste anyone on a blacksmith, for example. Which they would otherwise need, not only for the requirement to get the feudal age, but they would also need it in order to build that siege workshop, so it's quite nice. Thank you so much, T90 Official, for the sub as well. Congratulations. So the Vietnamese are just really, like, they're called an archer civilization for a reason. That's the thing that they do best. A lot of people have been asking me, what can you do as the Vietnamese in the early game? Because one of the most notable things about them is their lack of any sort of true economy bonus. The Vietnamese have various useful bonuses, particularly at the competitive level, that they have enemy positions revealed at the start of the game is quite strong at the competitive level because you know exactly how far away your opponent is, which helps influence your strategy, which I covered in one of my videos on rush distance. So that's really useful. It also helps you like steal their boar if you want to. It's a very powerful bonus, at least on the competitive level, but at a casual level, a little bit less so. They have no substantial early game economy bonus, and that really holds them back. They do, though, have additional archery range HP. It's like 10%, 15%, and 20% in the Imperial Age. That is a very strong bonus, and really, if you're playing the Vietnamese, that's the thing that you're going to probably rely on the most in the early game, is trying to get the maximum amount of value that you can out of your archer range units. So in the early stages of the game, you really want to be defending yourself with those extra archers. Having 33 HP compared to 30 allows you to live one additional shot from opposing archers, and that can really snowball a game out of control, especially if you're able to micro your archers well and spread the damage evenly across them. So that's what you should be focusing on if you're the Vietnamese in the early game, and also trying to take advantage of course, you knowing where your opponent is. If your opponent's very close to you, then, well, you definitely want to play more aggressively, but if they're very far away from you, you can maybe get away with a more defensive build, and you'll also get a better idea of where their resources are oriented compared to yours, how the map is set up. It's quite a strong bonus. Yeah, the bonus doesn't work on Nomad, though, of course. In the later stages of the game, the Vietnamese also grant access to Imperial skirmishers to everybody on their team, which is quite nice. It's also worth noting that in the Feudal Age, if you're playing as the Vietnamese, you also want to be making skirmishers as well, unless your opponent is going for something crazy like mass scout cavalry. But you do want to make sure that you mix in skirmishers, because the skirmishers also benefit from the archer range bonus. And little tips like these will allow you to just kind of take control of the early game, and it almost makes up for the lack of economy bonus. But still, though, you're inevitably going to be a bit outnumbered early on, and that's okay. And then, really, you just need to survive to the late game where you can make things like battle elephants and whatnot. If your opponent is like battle elephants and rattan archers, their unique unit is the rattan archer, very high pierce armor ranged unit. That unit has some rating potential because of its high pierce armor, but it has pretty good combat stats, but it is quite difficult to rush that out because of the castle requirement. In the late game, I think the Vietnamese are a very strong civilization. I think their battle elephants are decent with the plus 30 extra HP, but a missing blast furnace is quite bad, and I think they're also missing husbandry. In general, if your opponent is making, like, units that are very resistant to archer attacks that are not archers themselves, so things like elite eagle warriors, huskarls, for example, those type of things, you really want to make champions in that case, not battle elephants. If you make battle elephants versus a Goss Huskarl person, player that I showcased this in the Civ overview too, a Goss Huskarl person. If you make battle elephants versus him and you mix those with your rattan archers, while it is a very bulky, powerful army, that is a really poor, cost-efficient exchange on your part. You're going to lose so much gold, and you'll actually still might lose the battle anyway. So that's really not an effective answer versus the Goths. So don't be afraid to mix in champions if your opponent has units that your rattan archers themselves don't really cover. And of course the Vietnamese are quite strong without gold too because of that. Hey Pink Dolphin, welcome to the stream. If you're wondering why the architecture looks different, the Forgotten Empires team actually updated the Indians' architecture, so looks pretty snazzy, right?
Yes.
Moving on, the Indians are a civilization that I think there are a lot of misconceptions about, and I've talked about this before, but the Indians are most notable because they don't actually have access to knights, but they do have a stable, and their camels have a lot of buffs to kind of compensate for that. It is actually more than worth it, I think, to go for a camel rush in the Castle Age. At least it's a situationally strong strategy. Their camels counter a knight rush, which is something that is very dominant in the standard Arabia or open map competitive metagame in team games. A knight rush is very common. And if you're an Indians player, because you have a fast Castle Age into camels that is almost as good, you really disincentivize all of your opponents from going for the knight rush strategy that they so want to go for. And it can be very difficult for them to actually deal with in the early stages of the game. So I think that the Indian camel rush is actually quite strong. And in the late game, the Indians also have a very respectable death ball. A lack of knights kind of hurts them from a rating standpoint, but they just neutralize the enemy knight rush so very effectively. And I think that they're quite a decent civilization. They have a strong economy bonus too with the villager discount. We were talking a little bit about the Koreans in the early game, as Pete mentioned that he was just going to full boom this game basically because he doesn't think he can do too much early on. And that's because the Koreans are generally considered to be one of the slowest civilizations in competitive Age of Empires too. They also have one of the scariest late games in the game. I think why is this villager not fighting back? I'm just going to stare at this for a little while. Oh, that was so anticlimactic. Damn. Alright, well that villager did notice. Anyway, so the Koreans have a very weak economy bonus, which is that they mine stone faster. Really, the Koreans are kind of the quintessential late game civilization in the game. They're very powerful. When we're trying to evaluate how strong a civ is in the late game, we usually look at things like, do they have very strong heavy cavalry? If you have paladins, that's quite good. And the reason that paladins are a strong late game unit mostly is they're very cost effective. You are getting an absurd amount of stats for the money that you're paying. They're also mobile, so they're excellent rating units, and they upgrade from units that you are already incentivized to mass up earlier on. So that's quite strong. We don't have paladins here, so what are some other things that we should be looking towards? How well our civilization bonuses scale? Do we have access to gunpowder? Gunpowder very strong in the Imperial Age. And how good is our siege line? And when we look at the Koreans, they have an absolutely excellent siege line with extra range on their onagers, and they have very strong gunpowder as well. They have siege engineers, they have hand cannoneers, they have halbs in the front. We also want to look at our unique unit, and we need to ask ourselves, is this the type of unique unit that is strong in the late game or strong in the early game? And the War Wagon is so expensive and it has absurd combat stats, so it is definitely a late game unit. The Koreans' death ball is actually very difficult to deal with if you don't have like onagers of your own. To deal with their mass range units, then you still have to deal with bombard cannons or like having some really strong heavy cavalry, but they can put halbs in the front. Just the Koreans are a very slow civ, because faster stone mining doesn't really help you that much unless you're going for a tower rush. You can still defend yourself with towers, but that's generally not a good use of stone because you're going to need it for your town centers and your castles. Hey CJ, great to see you. I've seen a lot of very notable, awesome moonwalks at Ryan packs, but I can't name any off the top of my head. Moving on, we see the Incas over here that Mothimp will be playing. I think Mothimp played Incas last time. He was actually on the live stream. Incas are a civ that I think is criminally underrated. I think they were absolute crap when they came out in the initial release of the Forgotten expansion, but ever since Couriers, their unique tech was reworked, so it no longer gives 10% movement speed to Camel, Slingers, and Elite Eagle Warriors. I think they're actually a strong civilization. Now it gives them extra Dura Armor and Pierce Armor on their Eagle Warriors, Camel, and Slingers, and I think that's an excellent, excellent bonus. The Incas overall are fairly well-rounded. Like, they have a full barracks, they have a full archer range. I think the Slingers are, even though they don't have an Imperial Age upgrade, actually have pretty good combat stats. And in the Castle Age, they're very, very difficult to deal with now that they no longer have a castle requirement. Then the Camel is a criminally underrated unit. It also has just incredibly strong stats. The Incas have a good siege line. You know, they obviously don't have cavalry units, but now that their Eagle Warriors are actually good, they are a fairly decent substitute for them. The Incas are kind of a slow civilization because their elite Eagle Warriors won't always be that great, but their slow push cannot be underestimated. I think the Camel is such a powerful unit. It's a halberdier with like the combat stats of a champion, sorta, but the important thing is it's an infantry unit with 1 attack range, allowing them to actually focus fire down cavalry units. And that's huge. And also they get the first strike. Little things like that make a huge difference in these big engagements. Dura armor is melee armor. That's what it's actually called. And so, we have the Italians now, which Telemachos will be playing as. The Italians are a civ that has a very strong, again, like slow, late-game style death ball with their discounted gunpowder units. They're very strong archer range units. I really love what we did with Pavis, which now buffs the armor of all... It's one of their unique techs. It buffs the armor of all foot archers, so that's going to be Arbalest and our Genoese crossmen. I think this civ is actually quite strong, and as a death ball, it's very difficult to deal with, because normally this type of, like, heavy-ranged, slow-styled push that we see from civs like the Koreans is actually very weak to things like mass paladins. So provided you can back up your paladins with something, or maybe hopefully your teammates have a way to deal with the halbs in the front, you're good to go. But here... the Genoese Crossman is an archer unit with an attack bonus versus cavalry, so by mixing this into our gunpowder archer range death ball, it's actually quite difficult to deal with. Notably, the Italians are actually kind of busted on maps like Arena because the Condottiero is just so strong in the early Imperial Age. You wouldn't think it, though. It's just a unit that you would just blindly make, not to deal with gunpowder units, but just to kill everything. And it's actually quite strong in that respect. The Condottiero has been nerfed quite a bit, though, in its training time, so I think that the Condottiero is actually a lot more balanced now, but it's something that we're going to continually be monitoring from a balance standpoint, but we think it's at least in a lot better state than it was before. So that's basically all of the civs in the game right about now. I very rarely see the Condottiero used as a counter against actual gunpowder units. I think it's more of something that people like to exploit when they're playing with an Italian's teammate, and they're the Goths, for example, or the Malians. It's very strong in the early Imperial Age, and we actually might see it from Telemachos here. The arena metagame in general at least in team games, favors a more slow style of play. Since players start with stone walls, an early Dark Age or Feudal Age rush is going to be generally ineffective unless you're going for some sort of Khmer house hop strategy, which I believe Kanye Twest has a video for that on YouTube, where you're going for like a tower hop to try and like glitch your way through the walls. Beyond that, a Dark Age or Feudal Age rush is generally going to be quite ineffective. So usually you want to just go for a fast Castle Age, which involves you sitting in the Dark Age for a while, again, constantly making sure you're producing villagers. Then you get to the Feudal Age, and you want to build a blacksmith and market and spend as little time in the Feudal Age as possible and just go straight to the Castle Age, put down a bunch of town centers, focus on building up your economy. We call this booming. So you put down additional town centers, keep pumping out villagers out of them, and then you want to get to the Imperial Age around 30 minutes in or before, but if you're new, it's okay if yours is significantly slower than that. And then start focusing on making military units once you reach the Imperial Age. Italians teamed up with Goths are pretty insane, yeah. Condottieros are nowhere near balanced in the early Imp. Well, we got work to do then. They're significantly more balanced than they used to be, so if they're incredibly OP now, then, well, that was kind of a sleeper thing for a good chunk of the community besides the higher rated arena community. And it keeps me up at night imagining what that would actually be like. It's funny, but the Condottiero, I think, one of the big problems with it from a balance standpoint is just that all civils, it's a team bonus. I think that's the thing that really breaks that as a unit. Because civs with insane infantry bonuses, like the Vikings, for example, or the Malians, I think the Malians, it sounds really busted to me on paper, even though no one's really done it to me yet. I really worry about the Malians' extra Pierce Armor, Vikings' extra HP, Goths' faster creation speed, being totally broken with the Condottiero. And I think that's something that is very difficult to balance, and that's why the Condottiero hasn't been changed significantly. And it's just... the reason that we decided to nerf the training time was because that just nerfs it in the early Imperial Age. It makes that sort of fast imp into Condottieros just a bit weaker. Looks like we will not be seeing it right about now, without actually crippling them as a civ in general and making that unit too weak. It is something that we will have to monitor. I think, though, that just because it's a team bonus, it's going to be very difficult. Etspois says, Mr. Rez always reminds me to make villas. That's because it's incredibly important. And yes, Sauron's mind, you can actually use the Khmer houses because your villagers can garrison the houses to hop through the corner segments of walls, but it's actually quite tricky to do correctly. So notice that Ogreville's score is very low. Not exactly sure why. But it looks like he is in for a rude surprise as Buddy is not his friend. We'll be dropping a forward castle. Is this actually out of range of Ogreville's line of sight? It is not. Because of cartography, I can verify this from Telemacho's perspective, aka Kaladin's. So it looks like we're going to see a castle drop here, and he may be going for... Well, we're going to have to see. Because those double stables don't necessarily signify that we're going to be seeing camels here. He might just be going for bloodlines and husbandry. It looks like he's actually going to start off with a trebuchet. I'm not sure if he knew that this castle was there. Otherwise, I think he would have positioned his castle differently. That way, it would have been a surprise. Because now he's giving Ogreville ample time to react. I really like Ogreville's castle positioning here as it protects his main gold mine. I think his map's a little bit unfortunate having this stone mine right here, too. But it's not, like, too close to the walls. It gives him, like, enough vision. The thing is that if he built it right up against the wall, then Buddy would have known it was there. And then Ogreville wouldn't have known that Buddy was going to build this castle here because Buddy would have built it somewhere else. So something to keep in mind. Looks like Telemachos, our Italians player, will be opening up with Gunpowder. I think that this is actually quite a strong opening for the Italians, something that I really like to do. Pretend you're the Turks. Immunity, opening up with some siege weapons. We'll probably need to back up Ogreville, who's going to... Also, it is going to be Imperial camels here for Buddy. No elephant archers for him. I thought that that was an option, but I do agree with this decision to go for Imperial camels. I think Imperial camels are a lot faster to get out as a unit. Elephant archers, you have to make them from a castle, and they require so many upgrades. I think that the Siege Workshop is going to be for bombard cannons to try and deal with these trebs, which I also think is an excellent decision. I haven't played with the Serpent that much on my live stream, but I did play with him, I think, during my Khmer Arena gameplay, which I'm really, really happy with how well I played that one. There were a lot of really subtle things that I did in that game to make sure that Alexeyev stayed safe on his side, just sending him some support, and also to keep myself alive in what was otherwise a very dicey situation. So it looks like Buddy, since he got the first trebuchet out, he will end up winning this exchange. He is also repairing his castle. Critically, though, Buddy will end up losing his own castle, and I think, though, that he might have even been able to keep his castle alive if it wasn't seen while it was under construction, giving Ogreville ample time to respond to the situation. And now, looks like Kaladin will be looking to engage. With these Imperial camels, I feel like they have the advantage here. There are not enough hand cannoneers. Hand cannoneers very strong versus any sort of melee units. But here, the Imperial Camel just has such good combat stats. I don't think there are enough numbers here. But now there are. I think Buddy will have to back up, or he's going to lose all of these Imperial Camels, as now Kaladin has sufficient ranged units. We also have hand cannoneers coming out from our Khmer player, as well as arbalists from the Koreans. This is something we don't see enough, I think, from players in general. But I think this was a really good choice on Pete's part here. So, the arbalists are very strong versus hand cannoneers, and they're the type of thing that you can get out in the early Imperial Age for quite cheap. I think that's one of the biggest strengths of the arbalist, is that you can massive the crossmen in the Castle Age, and then you can... Oh, God, please, for the love of God, don't do this to me. This was a good game. Save and exit, save and exit! Save and exit! Why would you click continue? Oh, God, if he disconnects and you guys didn't save and exit, I'll be so upset. Oh, no, that's not unfortunate. Don't click continue. What are you doing? Oh, my God. You're going to strangle all of these guys. Unless he doesn't drop, then I'll be fine. Alright, he didn't drop. We're good. Alright, next time someone is about to drop... Oh, Cripple says who opened the tech tree. Next time someone's about to drop, for the love of God, click save and exit. I don't understand. They're just like, alright, screw this guy. And they're just going to click continue. Looks like, though, he didn't drop, so false alarm. Back in the game. Anyway, the arbalist is really strong versus the hand cannoneer, and I really like that Pete is going for this. I think if he was, trying to wait for something like Elite War Wagons, it would be too slow. He would not be able to give Buddy the support that he needs right now, because Buddy has to deal with multiple players at the same time. And he has this window of opportunity where he's putting so much pressure on Ogreville. And I think if Pete went for something slower than Arbs, it just would have made absolutely no impact. He was like waiting for war wagons and auditors. And he is doing that now. It's just that critically, he has the Arbs first, so we don't have to wait for too long. This castle is so great on Ogreville to be able to keep that alive. Such a strong gunpowder army from this team. Siege Rams here not going to really be able to accomplish too much, but he's just waiting for a good opportunity for this. Buddy going to transition to the elite skirmishers, and is also a good choice, and he's going to conserve some gold with some light cavalry. So, in general, in the later stages of the game in Age of Empires, you really want to be thinking about counter units here, and also being very efficient with your resources. So I think that Buddy is making some great unit choices here. I wonder why the Siege Ram is so far forward. Yeah, this is a 3v3 Shadow Lord.
No.
Oh, yeah, Miss Bud, I actually did get to play a game with the Serpent, don't worry. It was just based off his own availability. Elite Rattan Archers coming out for Okerville. I don't think Elite Rattan Archers will be that effective here. You know, we have Elite Skirms. Like, Rattan Archers are a hard counter to archer units, of which we don't see that many of them. And even though Pete has his own ARBs, he has Onagers, which will deal quite effectively with those Rattan Archers, so I don't think Rattan Archers will be very good here. I do think the Buddy is making the right units. I think that it was really cool to see both Immunity and Kaladin, so blue and teal, opening up with the mass gunpowder units. I think that is quite good. But now they're dealing with a lot of counter units. There's Hussars, there's Skirmishers, which are just a very cheap way to counter those hand cannons, and now I think they're going to have to start adapting into something else. Okerville desperately needs to secure this forward gold and stone mine, and right now Buddy is in. Does Buddy think he can commit? I feel like Elite Rattan Archers here are just not great, especially with the lack of any sort of defense upgrades. I think Okerville is about to die. He's going to need some serious help. His team does need to mobilize. Kaladin not quite ready to do that. Immunity on the way, but this is the push, and Buddy's able to do this because he has those Hussar units, and now he's able to get into this economy. And this is always huge whenever you're playing AoE. You will be able to hide those villagers in there. The moment that you can get some Hussars into your opponent's economy, now you're forcing them to garrison some villagers in their town center, and that cripples their economy. Even if you don't kill any of the villagers, those ones are not gathering, and that can really slow you down. Thank you, J-Fox, for the host. Arbalists are strong versus hand cannoneers because hand cannoneers are very inaccurate at range, and it's just a more cost-efficient exchange for you because the arbs are so very cheap, and they're much easier to mass up. So when I say very strong, I don't mean like in a one-on-one situation isolated in the scenario editor. I mean in practice. I think they're very strong versus hand cannons. Welcome to the stream, the Idle Villager. Yeah. Well, anyway, Okerville taking a lot of pressure here. We'll be sending out some halves, but really I just wonder why he is struggling a little bit this game. Perhaps it is that his economy is not quite large enough, and he ended up getting pressured by a very fast Imperial Age by Buddy. And if we look at his economy, actually no, it is reasonably sized. But he's just not able to spend the money right now, I guess because he's housed and he doesn't have enough unit production facilities. This is going to be quite a dicey situation for him, but his teammates are closing in. Will it be enough, though? That is the question, because I think this is a very strong army from them. And now, well, Motham hasn't really moved out yet. That's the crazy thing, is that Motham hasn't actually attacked much. So these guys are essentially 2v3ing on this side and getting away with it. These Hussars going straight for the economy, and once again, this is going to really cripple Okerville. It's going to pull attention away from the battlefield. It's going to force him to garrison his villagers. He has to deal with those Hussars, and while he's doing that, he's not able to produce military units. And now, Buddy and Pete are going to shift their attention to Immunity, who is going for those Elite Ballista Elephants. I think Elite Ballista Elephants are okay here, but you really have to watch out for those Imperial Camels and those Siege Onagers. He's going to need some sort of support units with that. Bombard cannons, I think, are absolutely excellent, so great to see that here from Telemachus. And Telemachus has to prepare because the battle's about to begin. That's why he had to pull all of his units to the bottom side of the map. Fully upgraded Elite Kamioks, I think, are going to be awful here versus the Italians. The Italians, not known for their excellent cavalry. They do have respectable cavalry now that they have Hussars, but it's really not that strong. And as a result, I think Motham is going to get cleaned up down here. He is applying a lot of pressure, and perhaps even if Motham gets cleaned up, it doesn't really matter. Which he is, because these hand cannoneers are a counter to those elite Kamioks. These Kamioks, best against cavalry units or like trash units or infantry. Not so great versus the hand cannons. He's basically drawing Teal's attention away from the top side of the map, where it is very desperately needed, as Green just kind of falling apart at the seams. Not enough unit production facilities, taking so much pressure. Notice how, again, he has to pull back all these units. Notice how his town centers are garrisoned, and this is because, again, those Hussars were going straight for that economy. Well, the Ballista Elephants are out. He does have full upgrades on them. He does have the chemistry upgrade. I think he's missing Siege Engineers, though, which I believe they do benefit from. Either way, the Skirmishers are not a good answer to these Elite Ballista Elephants, but, yeah, it's kind of, yeah, they don't really accomplish that much. The capped rams actually do have an attack bonus versus elite ballista elephants, which is an interesting thing. If you're really struggling dealing with this unit, what you want to do is you want to make onagers. You need bombard cannons, maybe some heavy cavalry units, halbs, or your own siege rams. These siege rams actually, these capped rams are just kind of being wasted here. Imperial camels also a great answer, just camels in general. But you're going to need a wide variety of units to deal with this death ball. It's just so slow to get out. I think ballista elephants here are not that great. He's going to need something to back them up, and lo and behold, it's going to be the Imperial skirmisher, thanks to Aoe2 being the Vietnamese teammate. Imperial skirm here I think will be better. It's just a very cost-efficient unit for how little gold, because it doesn't cost gold at all. So even though it is a small upgrade, that doesn't really matter. Wow, okay, actually Teal did lose all of his army on the bottom side of the map. That's kind of unexpected. I wonder exactly how that could have happened. Perhaps it's because Mothra made a great decision here by transitioning into elite skirmishers, which, again, they beat the hand cannoneers really well from a cost efficiency standpoint, even though they're so much weaker than arbalists. It's something that at least the hand cannoneers can't really deal with them without wasting a ton of gold. And wow, Teal getting destroyed by Mothra. Mothra moving forward with the siege ramps, and that could be the end of the game for this team. Unless they can pull some sort of miracle. One of the hard parts is the hand cannoneers become so much stronger once they're massed up, but it looks like Teal will just not be able to do that in time. So up to Immunity's perspective. Immunity has one hell of a strong death ball. He really does. Able to hold off both of these players at the same time. But we're going to need some upgrades on these elite skirms. Oh, nice, he is grabbing them right about now. All eyes on Aoe2. Can he build his way back into the game? Because look, his economy is just in shambles. Like almost nothing assigned to these farmers. And it's very difficult for players to build back their economy once they've lost so many of their villagers. A lot of them just kind of fall apart once that happens. And well, we see here that he's really not able to assign all the villagers that he needs. Also, he's missing this golden stone mine. Very, very dangerous location for him. Wow, these siege onagers are getting so much value. If you're the Khmer, what do I need to see in this case? I think I need to see bombard cannons to deal with these siege onagers. I think that's what he needs. And, well, once again, yellow going for some serious raiding. I'm going to keep green on the back foot for the rest of this game, and I think the decisive point is that orange managed to actually beat teal on the bottom side. Teal looks so very strong, but I guess orange had more numbers. He transitioned to the counter units at the right time, and he had the siege units. He was able to just take down those castles. Italian Hussars on the way out. I think the Hussars will be quite important here to take out that trebuchet, and a smart play on Teal's part to just focus fire that down. Really, he just needs to buy himself time by picking off those siege weapons, backing up his army, and just finding a way to stabilize. This castle would also be great. It is well positioned, but it's just too far forward. He does not have the map control to build this. He's losing so many of his villagers here. Teal's just taking so much pressure here. And it's going to be very difficult for him to claw his way back into this one. As now that castle hasn't gone up, he has to wait for his villagers to mass up in order to finish it. Blue against the world. Almost 2v1 right now, but without any bombard cannon support. It's very difficult to deal with the siege onagers that have the extra range, and Aoe2 desperately trying to put down some new production facilities, but they get shredded immediately. His economy just getting raided so hard. Making nothing but trash units will not quite be good enough here, even though his trash units are excellent. We're going to need to see some bombard cannon support from these guys to deal with that siege line. And meanwhile, on the bottom side of the map, just an absolute disaster. I don't use any architecture mod for yellow. Yellow is the Indians, so, and recently we updated the architecture for that civ with the release of Rise of the Rajas. Oh man, well, he is going to build another castle, again, just in a place to protect his economy and to stall, but Teal just does not have an answer to this Inca's death ball, once again proving that the Incas are a criminally underrated civilization. Even without padded archer armor, these elite skirms are plenty good. And Andean sling is a pretty cool technology too, not having any minimum range in the skirms. I don't think that's really been relevant here, but it is nice to see that in action. It's a tech that at least has a lot more power to it than you would think. Missing so many upgrades, and yet able to take on this Italians player. Otherwise, I would have considered this matchup to be fairly even, but it looks like Telemachos got caught by surprise, and with Aoe2 completely dead, they are basically going to call GG. So I think this was a great game on both sides. I think everyone played really, really well. Gotta give massive credit to Buddy for applying so much pressure early with such a fast Imperial Age and dropping that castle. That's something that you want to do, especially with players who you think are not prepared. If you can drop a castle on them early on, usually they just crumble under the pressure. And look how tanky this Ballista Elephant is. Takes like no damage from these skirms. Don't make skirms versus these. In this case, Buddy's just doing it as a way to deal with the opposing skirms, disincentivize hand cannoneers, and just as a meat shield to save resources. A couple knights coming out here. That's weird, but I guess it is very good versus Blue's army, even though Korean cavaliers are just absolute crap. You might see some good honor shots. That's pretty solid. I feel like they have very good late game with the Vietnamese Imperial skirm, but it's just not going to be enough. And Immunity playing so very well, but he just is not able to hold versus these guys. Wow, Motham has 13,000 food in the bank. GG, well played. A really, really excellent game here. Motham's Revenge. I believe he was Incas last time on our Hill Fort game, which you guys might remember. But for all you people in the YouTube comments, we gotta give Motham a pat on the back here. Really showing us that he has a lot of strength as a player, and the Incas, a good Civ too. This was unexpected. I really didn't think that Motham would actually sweep around the bottom side, especially because Teal had such a strong opening. I think he played so very well early on, but he did end up getting cleaned up down there. And yeah, Okerville didn't. He was put under so much pressure, and well, he wasn't really able to recover from Yellow's initial push, and then Red just coming in here with the early support. I think this would have been a different game. One, if Yellow was a little slower, or if Red didn't send such fast support. Even though his ARBs were denied rather early on, just being there was enough, I think, to allow Yellow to continue his push without really losing any momentum. And then, of course, the decisive point was that Orange managed to actually take on the Italians on the bottom side of the map. So GG, well played. Check out the achievements. Motham says, always Incas in your stream. You are always Incas. Oh man, we can see that the Teal, like, tried really hard to hold this line. And he did convert the most units in the game. 310 units lost, 200 units killed, 77 largest army is quite solid. Poor Okerville never really got his feet off the ground. Good to see, by the way, his teammates actually tributing some money. Perhaps this is also why Teal ended up petering out just a little bit, is he tributed 7,000 resources to both of his teammates, and I believe that he probably did that relatively early on. I'm assuming he did that in the early-ish Imperial Age, and I think that would have slowed him down quite a bit. He's just doing this just to try and get Okerville to be able to boom up his economy and get those military buildings out that he needed to, and also to give immunity a little bit of that boost, because the Khmer have to get a lot of upgrades, a lot of technologies. They need chemistry, siege engineers, like, oh god, they need a heavy scorpion, elite ballista elephant and everything. So it'd be quite difficult to get all that out without a little bit of extra sling. And 7,000 resources is a ton. So even if he slung only a little bit of that, I think that would slow him down quite a bit. Very fast age advancement times, of course, from our Khmer player because he has no building requirements. So I think he took great advantage of that. Only one castle from Buddy. So we didn't really get to see any elephant archers this game, nor did we get to see any heavy scorpions. But overall, I think we got to see a lot of the stronger aspects of these civs in general. Great to see. This is why these players are so high rated. They're this high rated for many reasons, but if you want to be this good, then you need an economy of this size. Notice how close in sizes each of their economies are, based off their needs. They either have like 120 villagers or like 132. And this is because you need that many villagers to constantly sustain villager production. These guys did such a great job managing their economies. Even Okerville, who took so many economic losses, actually had the largest economy in the game, so major props to him there. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you did, please do leave a comment and a like rating. I do read all your comments, even don't get a chance to respond to them. And feel free to share it around as well. Your support really helps out. So thank you so much, especially for those of you who also take the time to support the content that I do for other games. The Duelist stream that I did was very well received, and I hope to continue doing content for other games, as well as Age of Empires, to just improve the longevity of the channel. That way I can keep producing content for this game. So thank you. You guys are the real supporters. I think that game is actually pretty good from a performance standpoint. I'm really glad that immunity didn't disconnect. That would have been awful. I do think that the lag was probably pretty bad early on, I'm assuming, because there were so many villager losses, and apparently Pete did not get an attack notification from that lion. Youch. But the Vill should automatically have fought back, though. That was the thing. Thank you, Rustler Bra. I have so much great stuff on the way on YouTube and Twitch, so keep your eyes peeled. And if you guys, anyone that watches this on YouTube, can check out my Twitch page and Facebook and Twitter as well. Appreciate it. I will post this on YouTube in a little bit. Maybe by the time I have posted this, I'll have already made all my major announcements. That's more than likely. So, you know, there's a lot of good stuff. Urban Fervor says, I less than 3 resonance. Aww. A lot of Lobby Simulator today, but I thought this was a great game to end it off on. Zerakeli and I cast the games live during the live stream, like I spectate the games themselves. So I don't really accept replays. Well, good to see a crazy ice cube. Alright. So I'm going to cut up all this stuff and then post it on YouTube perhaps next week. Keep your eyes peeled. And yeah, appreciate the support. I will see you all next week. We have, actually, yeah, if you're watching this on Twitch, then Escaping Masters, yeah, is next week, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I will be co-casting with Zero Empires again. Those VODs will also be on my YouTube page. This is going to be a constant onslaught of content. Thank you, Ruster Bra. Thanks, Miss Aimbot. Oh, by the way, if you are a Twitch subscriber, feel free to stick around at the end of the live stream, and I have a little something for you guys. So if you're a Twitch sub, feel free to stick around. Gonna run a quick ad.